Well, here we are once again in my studio in progress, I guess, or my escape place with all of the interesting things I've collected over the decades surrounding me. And off to this side over here is the workshop where Teresa builds all kinds of wonderful furniture and all kinds of interesting things. Here's where I record my videos and also where I do some writing on my novel. Today, however, we're looking at another memento. I have a playlist called Mementos, and you can click on it at the end of this and see a bunch of other stuff that I've collected over the years, like this little thing that holds some special memories. Now, right here, I don't know if you can read this with the glare and all. I'll hold it up, sorta. It says, "Beautiful Downtown Burbank Olympics." And I think the date's on there somewhere. Yeah, 1972. Oh, gosh, let me hold up this way. Maybe you can see that. 1972. All right. This was the year after I graduated from high school. My best high school friend, Bill Krasner, and I used to kick around all the time. We did all kinds of interesting things together. And one summer, they were having the Olympics, the 1972 Olympics, and we decided that we, in fact, would have our own Olympics. So what we did is, I was into making Super 8 movies at that time. Later became a professional filmmaker, writer, director, editor for a bunch of years before I went on to teaching story structure. And I had all these Super 8 film reels, which are underneath there. I guess if you look close, you can see it's actually wrapped around the Super 8 reel. And I took those and put some aluminum foil on them for the ones that were the silver place. Gold ones, I don't remember. I think we had some kind of gold metallic wallpaper that we bought for projects or something. But anyway, we put these all together, and my family, this is one of the times that was the highlights of my life. We were taking vacations out to New York to see my road trips, to see my stepdad's high school and some of his buddies. We went all the way across the country and back, halfway across another year. One of them, Bill, went with us, and we saw Yellowstone that year for the first time. Walked up and saw this fallen tree. And since Star Trek was popular at the time, we referred to it as Captain's Log. I mean, it's pretty silly. But Bill, he was a sharp one. He saw Old Faithful coming up there, and he said, "Actually, it's a whale trapped beneath 3 feet of solid rock." Well, that's why I hung around with Bill. Anyway, my grandfather and grandmother were alive. My mom, my grandmother, and my grandfather all died in 1989, same year, about 6 months apart, for all different reasons. And that was a pretty big loss, 1989. But it also gave me a chance to reinvent myself, because my whole family network of how you should be and what you should do, nobody was ever strict, or nobody ever had any pressure. But that all vanished at once, and it was kind of like a pressure cooker with the valve taken off. Suddenly, here was life, and I was steam. Okay, so I made these up, and for my grandfather, he was great at billiards, pool. He had a pool table in his patio. Turns out right now I'm living in that patio in the back of the house that used to belong to my grandfather, where I grew up until I was 5 years old. Actually, 7, I guess, before my mom remarried to my stepdad, and then we went off and had places of our own. But this house has always been in my life. He bought it, I guess, before I was born, and I moved in when I was about a year old or a little younger, after my mom and natural father divorced. Really nice guy, too, and stayed with him all his life into his 80s as well. So anyway, back to the Olympics, okay? So the Olympics had something for everybody. Somebody was good at chess. We had one for chess. And, of course, we had the gold and the silver and a bronze, I think we had. And then we also had the billiards, the pool, because my grandfather was good at it, and certain card games that somebody was good at. And this one, if I can take a look at it, oh my gosh, what does it say? It says, I can't really, ping pong, ping pong. This was mine. That's why I've got it. I won it. Ping pong. I was really good at ping pong. And later on, of course, I did some ping pong in college. And the guys out there would get, every lunch. There were people out there who would just slam it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You'd have to be 20 feet behind the table just to try and return it. Boy, spin on it, to the left, to the right, all this stuff. And I could sort of hold my own. I was never the best, but I could hang in there for a while. There was one guy, he was so good at ping pong that nobody could ever beat him. Nobody could beat him. And he held the paddle funny. Instead of on the thing, he held it on the actual paddle, and then he used that as kind of whap spin. But we did have one glorious time when we got our vengeance on him. He came down with the worst case of hiccups I've ever seen in my life. It lasted like 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, he would still come into play, but he'd be about to hit this shot and he'd go, yep! It would shoot right past him. And so for those 2 weeks, we had our way with him, and we all more or less were equal, except for this guy. And finally, he was down to our level. He still played about as well as the rest of us, even with the hiccups, and that shows why we would never be professionals. Maybe he could be, but we certainly couldn't be. But a good memory, and in our family, I was the best at ping pong. One last ping pong thing about my grandfather's billiard table, pool table, really. And he had a ping pong overlay on it. That's the one we used for this, where you put the table pieces, 2 big pieces of wood with the markings, and you'd put up the net. And my aunt was over one time, and we were playing ping pong, and she was a great joker in the family. She just had, with my mom, okay, one time they were best friends, my mom and her aunt, Toots. She was my great aunt, but everybody called her Aunt Toots. And they were buddies back in Chicago. So they were walking along one day, my mom and my Aunt Toots, and my Aunt Toots says, watch this, to my mom, who's about 10 or 11 years old. And she says, okay. And she says, do what I do, and then don't say anything. So my aunt walks over on this crowded street, and all of a sudden she looks up and she goes, starts staring. And my mom looked around. Everybody else is sort of like, what's she doing? So my mom looked up and she stared too and did the same thing. And then my aunt said, okay, come with me. And they too walked away, and the whole crowd of people that they'd been in the middle of were all sitting there staring up to see what it was that everybody else was looking at. She started it. I don't know how long it lasted before it faded out back into the crowd after they left. But just by her doing that, everybody else got involved in it and stood there for quite a while, apparently doing that. My mom told me that story. Just amazing. Like I remember I had stories like that too. We were going, Teresa and I, down an escalator. I think it was in Macy's in the shopping mall here in Southern California. And as we were going down the shopping mall, there was one line going down. That was us. The other one was going up. And so as we were going down, I made 2 sounds. I went, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. Let me try that again. I went, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. Woohoo, woohoo, sort of like Marco Polo. Okay, can't do it now. I got a little frog in my throat. Yeah, see? Anyway, but is there something in my throat? Ha! Just channeling Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. Is there something in my teeth? Forget it. Anyway, but I made the sound, and somebody going up the other way who didn't know us and didn't expect it, some girl in her 20s, she just broke out laughing and laughed her way all the way up to the top. Now, clearly, by the way I told this, and the fact I couldn't make the sound very well, there's a big failure there. But, they can't all be gems. They can't all be gems. But this is a gem, or at least a shiny, and that goes back to that day in 1972, that one summer, when we had the beautiful downtown Burbank Olympics. Because Johnny Carson named it Beautiful Downtown Burbank when he was the big guy on the talk shows. Direct from beautiful downtown Burbank. He also said there was a place called Slauson Avenue, and he said, so here's the directions. You go out to the Slauson cutoff, cut off your Slauson. Okay, Johnny Carson was great. I remember Johnny Carson had just before we left for one of these trips with Bill Krasner, it was the first one, we were staying up late trying to get everything packed. And so we usually didn't stay up for Carson. He came on at 11 and went on until like 12:30. It was amazing. Anyway, so we're trying to get packed, and we have him on the background. And he's got this guy where he says something about the good book, and he's reading there, and he says, her breasts were like towers, quoting from the Bible. He says, this is a good book. Another time, the thing on the same episode, supposedly this guy could talk to fish. And so he's there with an aquarium, and Carson's letting him do his thing, and the fish aren't responding at all. And so he's just looking at the guy doing it. So finally Carson gets exasperated, and he leans over the tank, and he goes, hey, carp! Okay, well, I guess you had to be there, but It's pretty funny. Anyway, that's what this thing stirred. You see, that's what mementos are all about. Mementos. They bring back all these memories that are interconnected in strange and weird and wonderful ways. And you get to relive some of that stuff. And if you're lucky, you get to put it on video and share it with your grandkids. So someday they'll see this and they'll go, I'm related to that? Ah! Okay, but, can't help it. The choices we make in life are our own. Boys, you don't have to be this way. Yes, you do. Okay. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to stop now and leave you to your own. I actually worked for the CIA and the NSA and the NRO, and I devised a whole theory of narrative called Dramatica Story Structure. I was the co-creator of that, worked on it for 3 years, and finally figured out what we feel is the DNA of narrative structure and used it on these government things. So I was telling people at the time, I said, as we're working on these projects for the government, rest easy. The world's safety is in our hands. Well, anyway, now that I'm retired, I don't have to pretend it. Oh, one last one. When I was dealing with this NSA guys, and everything, we had a big meeting for our first project. It had people from all the intelligence agencies and also a bunch of generals with lots of stars on their shoulders. And we had this initial meeting, and the guy who was leading it, finally, after like about an hour and a half, he finally said, okay. He said, have we, gotten everything covered? Is there anything else anybody'd like to talk about? And I immediately popped up and said, I'd like to talk about puppies. Okay, well, you haven't lived until you've seen a 3-star general snort his coffee out of his nose. True story. Anyway, but it was worth it. And of course, it's only because I could do these magical things that nobody else could do back in the day that they had to put up with crap like that. You don't.